in California makes it very easy for citizens to change their sex and get an updated birth certificate reflecting their new choice. 3 options are now available: male, female, and non-binary. And there appears to be no limit to how many changes you can make or how often. So if sex, gender, is a fluid concept, what else is? Nell Daly is a psychotherapist, and she joins us tonight. Nell, thanks a lot for coming on.
Hi, Tucker. Nice to be here.
So I'm still confused by a lot of the parameters of this conversation because no one wants to talk about them. They just want to impose them by force and by screaming at you. But let me just ask a very simple question, which is if you can change your sex, or if you can proclaim that it's changed, why can't you change your race?
You know, that's a good question, and I understand where you're coming from, but I just want to approach this from a slightly different angle, and I don't mean to avoid your question.
Okay.
I've been thinking a lot about this issue, and 1.4 million people now identify as transgendered in this country.
Right.
So we think of this as like a liberal, progressive thing to give people the choice on their license and their birth certificate whether or not they want to identify as male or female. But think about it. If you're in an airport and you're an airport security officer and you have someone approach you, again, 1.4 million people are identify themselves as transgendered in this country. So you're a security officer and you have someone approach you and you're trying to identify them and you have their license in your hand. And they appear to look like a man but dressed like a woman. But on their license, they've checked other or X, right? They don't want to identify. You're actually able then to, I would suggest, more correctly identify that person than you would if...
I'm not even arguing against that. And by the way, I'm sure next year there'll be 20 million people who identify as transgender.
Right,
I mean, a lot of things are accelerating, and that's why it makes it so important for the rest of us who are looking on wondering what this is to get answers to straightforward questions like, what is this exactly? And what does it mean to change your sex? I mean, specifically, what does it mean? I don't know why that's a dangerous question. It's treated as one, though, of course. Yeah. Most straightforward questions are now. But I just want to ask another straightforward one.
Sure.
Last year, 10 years ago, we believed that sex was immutable. It's at the DNA level. You can tell from fossils whether it was a male or female, right? Now we claim that's not true. So if I can change my sex, then why can't I change my race? Like, who's making these rules, and what are the rules?
Well, in terms of the gender question, our governments are making these rules, right? The state of California and the state of Oregon and Washington, they've all said they've passed legislation that said that we're giving people the ability.
No, I mean, I know the mechanics, but like, so if I say I'm changing my sex, people will say, you know, you're courageous or whatever they'll say, but they'll accept it as real. If I say I'm changing my race, and by the way, now I'm potentially at least eligible for a lot of benefits because the federal government classifies us by race, I'm laughed at or seen as a threat. Why? I don't understand.
To be honest, I don't know if there's legislation, and I can't answer this question well for you because I don't know if there's legislation out there like there is in terms of what's happening in the gender movement in terms of race. So,
well, there's not, but I'm just saying all of this follows a philosophical change where 10 years ago we thought this would be ludicrous. Now we accept it as non-ludicrous. And now the laws are changing to follow the change in public opinion. But why are the people who think that this is totally non-ludicrous so hostile to the idea of me saying, you know, I'm American Indian or whatever? Why is that considered offensive? I guess is my question.
Again, I can't answer that question correctly for you because I don't know if there is sort of a hostile movement towards people who necessarily want to identify in terms of a different race. However, I can say this. I believe on most government documents that I've ever looked at, they give people an option to not say what race they are. And I'm sure that people lie all the time. I think Netflix just did a documentary on this where people claim that they're a different race than they actually are.
Well, I hope people will continue lying on federal forms about race because it's no one's business what race you are. It's and
some people would argue it's nobody's business what gender you are as well.
Okay, then that's what they're arguing. Nell, thank you very much.
Thank you, Tucker. Thanks for having me on.